What is up, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global back here with another video, and in this one we got a very special video. Of course, this is something that you all have been waiting for a very long time now, and this is my full 7-round 2020 New England Patriots mock draft. Now, this video goes along with the exact draft picks that the Patriots currently have right now, which is April 15th. Next week starts the NFL draft, and the Patriots have a total of 12 draft picks. In this, I don't have the Patriots making any trades, so the current draft picks they have are the picks that I have them selecting at. So let's just hop right into this with the first pick, 23 overall. I have the New England Patriots selecting linebacker Kenneth Murray. Now, of course, Murray is going to be coming out as one of the best available linebackers in this year's draft, coming out of Oklahoma, sitting at 6'2", 241 pounds. Ran a 4.52 in his 40-yard dash, so he's going to bring a bit of speed here to the Patriots at the linebacker position, which of course they could really use. The Patriots need linebackers, okay? The boogeyman defense that they had this past season primarily came from their linebacker core, okay? Dont'a Hightower, Landon Roberts, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins. The Patriots don't have three of those guys: Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy, Landon Roberts. We've seen as Patriots fans over the past few years what it is like when we don't have linebacker core that is able to keep up and really ultimately just do their job. The Patriots have a great secondary. Their defensive line has some questions, but it can manage. The linebacker core is really going to piece the defense together. His speed allows him to go from sideline to sideline, really racking up tackles. And because of that, he also has a really great burst, which makes him have the ability to make more plays than, of course, the average linebacker. The NFL actually reported as one of his strengths that he runs and moves in space like a safety, and that's exactly what you want to hear from a guy in coverage at the linebacker position. The great thing about him, too, is that he's very versatile. He can spy, he can blitz, or he can set the edge on passing plays. He's a very versatile guy, and like I said, the fact that they can bring speed is going to both the Patriots really well because currently they don't really have that. Dont'a Hightower, he's a guy that you want to set the edge, stop the run, rush the quarterback. He's not a guy that you want to set back there and, defend the pass and put in coverage because it's not going to go well. He does not have the speed to do that. He has amazing range now. His decision-making definitely has some question marks there, but I think with the coaching staff like the New England Patriots, they'll be able to teach him, wrap him up, and with time, that will definitely even out smoothly. He's not going to be your average pound the ball, stop the run type of linebacker, but I'm honestly 100% okay with that. The Patriots can 100% get that later in the draft, and I actually have them selecting a guy later in the draft just like that, so stay tuned through the rest of the video. But to grab a guy who has the ability to be like Quan Alexander, that could just be a match made in heaven and be a huge difference maker for the Patriots defense. Now, next up, we hop right into the third round, of course, are the New England Patriots. They don't have a second round pick currently, so in the third round with pick number 87, I have the New England Patriots selecting tight end Thaddeus Moss. Now, of course, a guy like Cole Kmet probably would be a more viable option, an option that I'm sure 70% of people would like more than Thaddeus Moss, but of course, the fact that the New England Patriots don't have a second round pick, hopping right into the third round with pick 87, I just don't see Cole Kmet being a guy that drops that far. I totally see some other team picking him up before that. Now, pick number 87 in the third round might be a little bit higher than some would take Thaddeus Moss, but the New England Patriots need help at the tight end position. Currently, right now, all they have is Ryan Izzo and Matt LaCosse on the active roster, so believe it or not, our tight end core got worse than it did last season. There's not going to be too many options here for the Patriots at the tight end position. This is not a great tight end draft class, so the Patriots are going to want to take a guy higher to make sure that they are able to land someone rather than trying to push their luck. Now, Moss is definitely an intriguing prospect. Of course, he is the son of Hall of Famer wide receiver Randy Moss. He sits at 6'2", 250 pounds, has a good build. He doesn't necessarily have the desired height that I would personally like, but he has still been able to get it done despite being a, shorter than average tight end. He has really great versatility. His contested catch is really amazing. He is a very short-handed tight end and also brings a great aspect of run blocking. When you look at what the Patriots need, he really truly does fit the bill. A guy that, Jared Stidham or whoever the Patriots quarterback will be can throw the ball into tight coverage and have a guy like Thaddeus Moss come down with it, not have to worry about him dropping the ball, but also having a guy who can come in and help out the run game. The Patriots desperately need that. Ryan Izzo is probably currently their best run blocking tight end. The Patriots could really use an all-around tight end who can block, but can also go out and do something in the passing game. Now, some concerns and some weaknesses of his is the fact that he does have a bit of injury concerns. It's going to be something to watch heading forward. His yards after catch isn't necessarily elite level. You're not going to get that type of guy who catches the ball, stiff arm, plows through everybody, kind of like a Rob Gronkowski. But in the end, if he's able to catch the ball and get down when it's going his way, that's all that matters. He also does struggle a bit against press coverage, but that doesn't worry me too much. I think that the Patriots could even that out for him, within his first year or two. So next up in the third round with pick number 98 overall, I have them selecting a safety in Jeremy Chinn. Chinn is a guy who's expected to go somewhere within the third round. Experts are expecting him to go early to mid third round. He's going to bring some nice height to the secondary, sitting at 6'3", 212 pounds. He has really great playmaking ability. I even feel that some of it is still pretty untapped from what we saw in college. Really, ultimately, just great ball skills, especially playing in deep coverage. The Patriots got rid of Duron Harmon, shipped him off in a trade with the Detroit Lions this offseason. He was that guy who was a pretty big playmaker, didn't get too much play time. That was more of a transitional guy, but helped a lot within deep coverage. Chinn wasn't a guy who was used all that much. In 2019, he didn't put up crazy stats, but he was still able to record 4 interceptions. He's going to be a guy that doesn't excel very well at man coverage. He's going to have to get better at that, or at least putting him back there in a zone safety type of role. Again, something like they did with Duron Harmon, having a corner go up against man-to-man, having a guy like Chinn back there playing zone with safety help over the top, I think that could be where he excels more at. Ran a 4.45 in his 40-yard dash, so he isn't going to be anything crazy speed-wise, but he will bring some help to, the secondary with speed, which, again, is going to prove to be very beneficial here for the New England Patriots throughout the next few years. A lot of the issues that I've both seen and heard from Jeremy Chinn are things that I really feel that can be ironed out here by Bill Belichick. One of the things was his football IQ. I think that with time, with learning the Patriots playbook, that he will learn, and again, something that like that who he has a weakness in can really start to become more of a strength for him rather than a weakness, especially if you give him time to learn under veterans, like Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, and even Adrian Phillips. Now, that goes on to the next question, which is, look, the Patriots have a good amount of safeties right now. They brought a guy in for who's mainly going to be special teams this offseason. They brought in Adrian Phillips, who is more than likely going to be playing more on defense. He does have special teams ability, but I think bringing him in is going to be more for defense after shipping Duron Harmon out. You have Patrick Chung with so many question marks around him. He's getting older, always getting banged up. Last year was just a mediocre season, which he really regressed. You have Devin McCourty, who, look, he signed a 2-year contract. If he plays out that 2-year contract, I don't see him signing another one after that. He's considered retirement for really the past 2 years. So I think at the end of this 2-year contract, he's going to be done. So that puts the Patriots at a position where they're going to need some safety help. If one of those guys goes down, then the Patriots are at a position where they need safeties right now. Bringing in a young guy who can fill that role, but can also be a guy for the future, I think would be a great pick. Now, next up in the third round with pick number 100 overall, I have them selecting a defensive end in Terrell Lewis. I think that he'd bring a pretty nice aspect to the New England Patriots. Coming out of Alabama, 6'5", 262-pound defensive end edge rusher. The Patriots have seemed to have some interest in him, and he seemed to be related back to the Patriots quite a bit, especially as of late. He racked up about 21 solo tackles along with 6 sacks in 2019. I know that stat sheet does not sound amazing, but something that you also have to be aware of is the fact that injuries have plagued him quite a bit over the factor of his career. He's an amazing edge rusher, and I think that he could really take that position of Kyle Van Noy on the edge and replace him very nicely. Of course, he's not going to replace Kyle Van Noy in the aspect of a linebacker, blitzing off the through the middle, taking on coverage, nothing like that. But when we're talking about him setting the edge, I think that could be a really, really great replacement for him. The best part about drafting him, though, is the fact that we could afford to do it after the first round and getting a high-quality player. He has a lot of potential that, again, still just has not been totally tapped on yet. I think the Patriots can really get into his untapped potential. But what I really like about him is the fact that he's consistent. He's not a guy that's going to go and have a 2-sack game and then not have a single sack for another 5 games. Patriots need consistency, especially on defense for this upcoming season. His length is really going to be probably the best trait about him. I think that his length is going to be very beneficial for him, and of course, whoever drafts him, if the Patriots draft him, that could be really, really well for them. His durability is going to be the biggest question mark for him. His football IQ does have a little bit of question marks also, but you got to understand that that's very understandable given the fact that he hasn't had too many starts due to injury, so he hasn't been able to prove that all that much. I mean, essentially, the guy has so many traits that a team would love to work with. The big reason that he's going to be, expected to go later again is because of that durability, but a guy who can get off the edge with burst, has length, has very nice pass rush moves, strength, speed, and quarterback pressure. What more can you ask for? Now, I do have some questions about him and his ability to stop the run, but in the end, if we're talking about a guy who is going to be someone who has untapped potential, some more development, going into an organization like the New England Patriots, who are known for being able to develop players, especially at being able to rush the quarterback, especially over, I would say, the past year or two. I would just love to see this selection to the New England Patriots. I think lining him up and then Winnow over at the other end could just be a really good defensive edge mashup. Now, next up in the 4th round, pick 125 overall, I have the Patriots selecting wide receiver James Prochet. We love a good James Prochet. I think we can all agree about that. I made a video on James Prochet earlier this offseason when, he was getting a lot of hype. He was getting so much talk about him and the New England Patriots. News came out that the Patriots were actually gushing over him. So if you do want to know more about James Prochet, I made, an entire video on him. I'll leave that video, a link in the description below. You can go check that out after you watch the rest of this mock draft. But I would love to see James Prochet with the Patriots. I mean, essentially, he's a guy that we have not seen within the Patriots organization for a very long time. He brings those classic Bill Belichick Patriots offense type of traits. Now, he's going to be more of your Julian Edelman, Wes Welker type of vibes. He's going to be more of that slot receiver, does most of his work within the middle of the field. Your smaller guy also sitting at 5'11", 201 pounds. He has essentially just pretty average quickness, speed. He's not a guy that is going to, go out and amaze you with that, nor is he going to do it with his size. So what he really amazes you with, and the fact that he is a high to mid-round pick, is the fact that he has just extraordinary ball skills that help his catching ability, and you've seen that throughout the entirety of his game tape. He has traits that I just feel like we haven't seen with the New England Patriots in quite a long time, and that's the fact that, he has essentially alpha instincts. At least that is how I've seen many people put it, in the fact that he does really well with ball tracking, body control, and has really, really sharp focus. Because of this, he has pretty nice contested catch ability, not just in the short to mid-range of the field, but also even on deep routes. His route running is definitely pretty nice. It's going to be more advanced than I would say a lot of the receivers already on the New England Patriots, but he definitely could still polish that, but he has just attributes that you can't teach. He's a freak of nature with, a freak amount of talent. And I really think that for right now, he could become a really nice wide receiver 3. I mean, over the past 2 years, he's grabbed 209 catches and 27 touchdowns. I also cannot value how good these guys' hands are, okay? He is also very good at being a punt returner. He can also be a kick returner, so I think that's a section that the New England Patriots could really value in him. But the fact that he can also make one-handed catches, and I mean very acrobatical one-handed catches. To me, truly, there are not any red flags about James Prochet. The ball skills undoubtedly are there. Let's just work on the route running a little bit, and I think that he could be a guy in the New England Patriots system that becomes a fan favorite and happens long term. He's going to be a guy that I think could serve very well post the Julian Edelman era. So now is when we start moving into the 5th round. So in the 5th round with pick number 172, I have the Patriots finally taking an offensive lineman in offensive tackle Charlie Heck. Now Charlie Heck is a guy that, let me tell you, brings a very good build. One of probably the best I've seen throughout the NFL. Now, of course, we're going to have to talk more about his ability to be an offensive tackle. Build is not just what it is when it comes to being a productional offensive tackle. But coming out of North Carolina, sitting at 6'8", 311 pounds, going to be a very big guy to try to stop here in the NFL. One of the most interesting facts about this guy is that he has a father that is an NFL offensive line coach. I think that really should have helped him throughout his career. He should know what to expect when transitioning from college into the NFL. He's getting a bigger foot up than pretty much every other guy that is an offensive lineman coming out of this year's draft. For being a big guy, he has the athleticism and the agility to be able to accelerate and keep up with the faster defensive linemen that are moving towards him. He essentially does a really well job to keep rushers at the end of his reach when it comes to pass protection, and he battles to make sure he keeps that path wide, ultimately just trying to make sure that the defender keeps a good distance away from the quarterback. Now, he does have to clean up his pass sets. He needs to do a better job of framing rushers to avoid, too much recovery and opening the B gap. An issue here is the fact that his height does present a natural leverage restriction that he will need to overcome in order to become a good offensive tackle within the NFL. That height, that strength, the build, it could be a great thing, but it can also really, become a curse, for lack of better words, in the fact that these smaller guys are going to be able to get a bit of a hold on you because you're possibly not really able to bend over as much as these smaller guys would be able to. Ultimately, when it comes to him, I would say that his best trait would become his length and his mobility. I really like a big guy. I like a guy that's able to be athletic and mobile, but he's going to have to work on that leverage. He's going to have to work on that footwork because that is just as important as being able to be mobile and having a bigger frame. Clearly, this pick, I think, makes sense. The Patriots are going to need offensive linemen. Some, mock drafts I've seen have the Patriots taking an offensive guard rather than a tackle. I've put a lot of thought into this. I just think that they have more depth at offensive guard than they do at offensive tackle, and I think offensive tackle is going to be more important. Right now they have Joe Thuney, they have Shaq Mason, they have Yelda Froholt, they have Jermaine Illuminor. So I think that right now guard is pretty fairly set up. When you look at the tackle position, I think that there's even more questions than the guard position. Isaiah Wynn, so much question still about him. He's never able to stay healthy, it seems like, ever since we drafted him. You have Marcus Cannon on the other side who's taken up a big cap hit. Is he going to be a trade release candidate? Also the fact that he is getting older, okay? And he has trouble staying healthy. The Patriots do have Corey Cunningham, and they do have Yanni Kajust, but those two guys are still very unproven. Yanni Kajust, of course, is also a guy who is still a rookie. We didn't get to see anything out of him last year because he is also coming off of some pretty big injuries that kept him out all of last season, so I think taking a good big tackle here makes perfect sense. So now moving on to the 6th round, and this is really where the Patriots have their compiled amount of draft picks between the 6th and the 7th round. That's where half of their picks are actually coming. So in the 6th round, pick 195 overall, I have the Patriots selecting kicker Rodrigo Blankenship. This is definitely an intriguing situation for the Patriots this entire offseason, but even heading into the draft, because there are a good amount of kickers this year. Blankenship is going to be one of the best kickers, if not the best kicker in this year's draft. I mean, he nailed a 55-yard field goal attempt in his combine drill. He made 92.7% of his kicks under 40 yards. He has a career of 82.5% of field goals marked as a former walk-on. He's a guy that is consistent, has really good follow-through. He also has very good leverage in order to get the ball from 50-plus yards. Something else here is the fact that he'll provide very good kicker in the kickoff game too. Of course, as we all know, last year we had to roll with our punter on kickoffs. He didn't do bad, but it was a very interesting and intriguing situation here to say the least. But with Blankenship, he's a guy that has had, very high praise for his kickoff hang time, which is something, the Patriots went to Jake Bailey with, was because of his hang time. Now, here I originally had Chase Vinatieri, but after thinking a little bit more, if the Patriots are going to go ahead and draft a guy in the 6th round at the kicker position, which I really think they could, I think that they'll go with a guy a bit higher than Vinatieri. Vinatieri is a guy that I think they could easily get in the 7th. Some people are even talking about him being able to go and be an undrafted signing. And I think that Blankenship just has a little bit more upside than Vinatieri does. Now, next up in the 6th round with pick number 204 overall, I have the Patriots finally selecting a quarterback. This one's going to be in James Morgan. I'm sure a lot of you know who James Morgan is by now. He's been a guy that has been very highly talked about. I've seen some people saying that he'll go in the 5th, but he is expected to be, a later round quarterback selection. A lot of teams have gotten very high on him. The Patriots have also been very high on him and have been very much related back to him as of late. Sitting at 6'4", 229 pounds, brings a pretty nice build to the quarterback position and also brings a very tough aspect at that point also. And look, I think if the Patriots could get this guy mid to late round, that it would be a pretty good selection. I think he's got qualities that it would be very interesting to see what Bill Belichick and the rest of the Patriots coaching staff would be able to do. He's a guy that over his career has had a very low sack total, and because of that, the reason to that has been because he gets the ball out very quick. That's something that Bill Belichick very much loves. He also has a completion total that was more so taken down, not because it was his fault with accuracy, but more so because he had issues with receivers dropping the ball in 2019. He's another guy that, kind of like Jarrett Stidham, has very nice flashes of arm talent, major league arm talent, to be able to make top-tier NFL throws. Something about him, though, is that he lacks pocket mobility, so I don't think that he's going to be the type of guy that you're going to see blitzing. More so likely going to be your classic pocket passer. He does have to work out some technical things. He has some inconsistent footwork, some dysfunctions with ball placement, which is really hindering his accuracy. So, of course, definitely not a guy that you would be plugging in year one whatsoever, but an interesting developmental piece that I think has some really good traits that could work well with the Patriots, especially if they could get him in the 6th round. I would say that James Morgan's best trait would be his arm talent, And the trait that is very questionable, the thing that they have to work out most, is going to be his decision making. That to me is probably the biggest red flag about him, is the whole decision making. Bill Belichick loves his decision making in his quarterbacks. You look at when he drafted Jarrett Stidham, something he was praised for was decision making, taking care of the ball. Even when they drafted Danny Etling, something about him that was highly praised was his decision making. And all the way when they drafted Tom Brady, what was something that they picked him for? His decision making and being able to take care of the ball. Now, next up in the 6th round with pick 212 overall, I have the Patriots selecting another linebacker in Marcus Bailey. This guy is very intriguing. The reason that I really started to look into him even originally, and a big reason I actually have him on this list, is because of the fact that the Patriots seem to be very highly interested in him. Gerard Mayo, who of course is the Patriots linebacker coach slash sort of kind of defensive coach. It's kind of a weird situation there. But he has had multiple FaceTime meetings with Marcus Bailey, which kind of just goes to show that they have a level of interest in him, and he, I should say, has qualities that they think intrigue them enough to potentially draft him. Something I will say is that he has a nice build, but he is going to be an undersized linebacker. Only sits at about 6 foot, but 235 pounds. His 40-yard dash didn't actually run one, so we don't know how fast he is. But due to his weight, I don't expect him to be anything special. Coming off the edge or in coverage. He's a guy that is going to lack that top-tier athleticism, but he plays with really good strength. He has really good football IQ, uses his strength really well, which is really what puts him in a good position to make good plays. He's a guy that's going to need to get more confident here in the NFL. He is going to have to really look into how the schemes are built within the NFL, because he's going to have to use that football IQ to really bulldoze over the fact that he's not going to have the athleticism to match the NFL. Something that also stands out about him is the fact that he has had knee injuries in 2015 and 19, which is most likely what is going to hurt his draft status. He is a mid-round quality selection, but because of some of the things that are kind of holding him back, and also the injuries, I see the Patriots very well being able to select him here in the 6th. He's a guy that responds really well against the run. To me, I would say that that's probably where he excels most at. He's very quick to diagnose run plays. He also had above average production against both the run and pass. I was more surprised to hear that he had above average production against the pass. So, to have a guy who can do both is very good, but, if I had to make the projection here, I would say he's going to be a more excelled version of a Landon Roberts, but with a little bit more capability against coverage. If I had to say his best trait, I would probably go with his smarts, his football IQ. Something he needs to work on is how explosive he is. Now, to finish out the 6th round with pick number 213 overall, I have the Patriots selecting tight end Devin Asiasi. He might be a bit of a push here, but look, okay, some experts have tried to say he's more of a 4th round selection. Personally, I don't see it from the mock drafts, from, the constant research I've done on this guy. I don't see him going in the 4th. I see him being more of a 5th to 6th round pick. He's a 6'3", 257-pound tight end. He's a guy who does not excel very well in blocking, but his athleticism and speed really stand out in the passing game when he's in space. He is a threat in the seam and with deep corners and over routes in play action based on certain defensive attacks. There have been some concerns here with his weight. Sitting at 257 pounds, some people feel like that is a bit too high for him, especially for a guy that kind of relies more on his speed and elusiveness off the line. I would say his best trait here is going to be a balanced skill set. He has skills in really each area. Some just excel more than others. Some just need way more help than others. I would say his worst trait is going to be his contested catch, okay? He's not going to be a guy that you're seeing making amazing catches in traffic. He's not going to be that Rob Gronkowski or even a Thaddeus Moss type of player. I really like the Patriots picking up 2 tight ends in this year's draft. I think that it could be a really nice combination. I would even love if, let's say, they picked up Thaddeus Moss and somehow they were even able to pick up another higher round guy, let's say in the 3rd, 4th, or even 5th round. Just in this certain mock draft, that's kind of not how I ended up having it panned out. But I think that it could bode really, really well here for the Patriots going into next season if they had a guy like Thaddeus Moss, Asiasi. They also could able, to roll with Ryan Izzo, who has shown a good amount of potential, especially this past season, and make a trade for, a top tier, not even necessarily top tier, but a more proven tight end in the league, someone possibly like OJ Howard, or even if they want to go to free agency and pick up a guy like Jordan Reed, I think that would make this tight end situation way more improved than it has been the past couple of years. Now is when we move on to the 7th round. Now with pick 230 overall, I have the Patriots finally selecting a defensive tackle in Tyler Clark. This is definitely a guy who was tough for me to really get some information on. There's not too much about him, but I mean, hey, as you go on throughout the 7th round, that's kind of more expected. He really does have a nice size here for a defensive tackle, sitting at 6'4", a total of 300 pounds. In 2019, Clark had a total of 2.5 sacks along with 26 tackles. In 2018, he had a total of 31 tackles with 4 tackles for loss, 3 passes defended, and 1 sack. He also had 41 tackles with 2.5 sacks in 2017. For a 7th round pick, I like the potential value that the Patriots could get here. He has a good amount of upside with a lot of areas to improve. It's just kind of going to depend on where does he go. I think with a place like the Patriots, that's one of the best situations here for him to get the best out of him. He's been a guy that's been pretty decent in both aspects of the game, both in being able to stop the run, but also being able to go ahead and get to the quarterback. I would say that, like I said, he brings a good, height and weight to the defensive tackle position, but he's not your classic fill the space type of defensive tackle. Nothing like a Danny Shelton, where they're just huge boulders to try to get through to stop the run game. I would say that because of that will help him maneuver a little bit through trying to be able to be a little bit more athletic to also get to the quarterback. It's no secret here that the Patriots do need some help at the defensive tackle position. They brought in Bo Allen, who I would say is a less productive version of Danny Shelton. So, I mean, personally, I would say that they downgraded a bit here at the defensive tackle position compared to last year. And even last year, they needed a bit of help. I would have loved to try to squeeze a defensive tackle earlier in here in the draft, but it just kind of didn't work out like that. So 7th was kind of the best place to get one. So moving on to the final pick of the Patriots Global 2020 NFL Mock Draft in the 7th round, pick 241 overall. I have the Patriots selecting wide receiver Kendrick Rogers. And look, if the Patriots could get him here, I really like this value. Now, he's going to be a guy that actually brings pretty nice build here to the wide receiver position, which I would really, really like. Sitting at 6'4", 208 pounds, ran a 4.51 in his 40-yard dash, so really nothing special speed-wise. He was a guy that really showed a lot of promise back in 2018, but in 2019 kind of just dried up a little bit. Because of that, that is where his draft capital kind of took a hit. He's a guy who has undeniable size and ball skills, but he's definitely had issues with tape, which is a big reason that his draft status is also going to drop. He's a guy who lacks necessary strength and quickness to be able to free himself from tight man coverage, especially against some of these better cornerbacks in the NFL. But he's a guy who has above average mid-air adjustments, which of course is very complementary to his size. He of course also has a size to pull cornerbacks along after the catch, kind of a yards after the catch type of ability there for him. He's also someone who could help the Patriots out very, very well in the red zone. He really offers quarterbacks a very nice size and a very nice target to be able to go to, which, quite honestly, when you're looking at the Patriots right now, don't necessarily have that type of guy. So someone that could come in and really be a threat here for the Patriots in the red zone. He had some crazy catches and some crazy touchdowns. You know, the NFL calls it, and I quote, circus catches, when he played against Clemson and LSU back in 2018, which is really what put him on the map. Of course, there's going to be so much things that they're going to have to work on with this guy. He's truly going to be a developmental piece. He's going to be a very intriguing project here for whoever does draft him. You know, some issues being that he lacks hand strength. He has below average instincts to be a pass catcher. He goes into his routes with low energy. He gets beaten up by big press corners when they're playing in the release game. And he needs to play with more grit, and he needs to be more, fight back than he's giving off. But that is going to be it here for my 2020 NFL mock draft. If you guys got all the way here, what are your guys' thoughts on my mock draft? Let me know all of your thoughts in the comment section below. Is there anything that you would personally change? If so, let me know in the comment section below. Of course, just like last year when the Patriots go ahead and they draft the players, they announce their draft picks, I will get up onto the channel and to make a total, draft profile on the guys that they draft, just like I did last year. Now, thank you all so much for watching. Please, guys, make sure that you go ahead and leave your comments in the section below. Please, guys, go ahead right now and leave a slap like on this video right now. This video took a lot of time to make, a lot of research, a lot of time to record, so it would mean a lot to me if you guys went ahead and gave this one a thumbs up. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you are a New England Patriots fan or just want to know more about the New England Patriots. Thank you all so much for watching again, and I will catch you in my next video.